Welcome to Your College Bound Kid,
podcast for parents and families everywhere.
Whether you have kids that plan to attend college or you have current college students, you want them in and you want them to graduate.
And you want a quality education and you want amazing college professors. I am Mark Stucker and I'm a college coach.
And I am Anika Madden and I am a parent. It is Thursday, August 15th, and welcome to episode number 81, Common Mistakes Made by International Students. This week in the news, the admissions arms race, 6 ways colleges game their numbers. And we're in chapter 81 of 171 answers, and we're talking through some common mistakes made by international students applying to U.S. colleges. And this week's question is from a mom who wants to know if LinkedIn could be useful in the college application process. And Mark returns with Miss Chika Nwosu, a recent high school graduate, and she's going to give us an update on her college admission process.
So, Nika, you know I've been Mr. World Traveler lately.
Yes, you have.
And I had 2 amazing days at Smith College in Northampton, Massachusetts. So,
oh, my goodness gracious.
Our listeners who can hang with us till the end, I'll share a couple tidbits about my experience at Smith.
Awesome.
Okay, Anika, you know what we're doing. Countdown time.
Mm-hmm.
We are looking at the 12 reasons people fire the podcaster, why they unsubscribe from a podcast. And we are at number 8, and that would be sleepy voices, no passion. Like you last episode.
You planted that. Is that for real, Mark?
Yes, it is. That? I'm not making this stuff up. Hint.
Mark, we normally,
that was only one episode out of 80 that you've been that way. I'm just fooling around with you. But what about others that you've listened to? Can you think of any? Because I have one in mind.
Oh, do you really?
Yeah, because it's just like, passion matters. And if you're monotone and you're dry and you're insipid, your content has to be amazing to hold me, because I can find another one out there on the same topic that's not dry as that.
That's a fact. But when you said sleepy voice, though, I thought you meant you wake up in the morning or you get ready to go to sleep, like I am immediately after we were finished recording this, and you got that sleep voice on, like that rattle in your voice. I thought you meant that, not necessarily just being dry and boring.
No, because the main thing it said was no passion.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess I haven't. No, I don't have one of those, but we won't be doing that anymore.
No. All right, let's dive into our content. Let's turn to college hot topics in the news.
All right, Mark, this week's article entitled The Admissions Arms Race, 6 Ways Colleges Game Their Numbers. And this is actually a fairly older article. It was written by Miss Marian Wang. It's found on Pro-Publica. Never heard of that. Pro-Publica.org. So, Mark, the writer, Ms. Wang, she gave a name to the 6 ways colleges game their numbers, and she called it Strategically Achieved Statistics. I thought that was kind of clever.
Mm-hmm.
So we know these college-bound kids, they're looking at the stats. We talk about the rankings, how they're using that to weigh their options, looking highly up on the schools that report high numbers of applications, test scores, low acceptance rates, all of that. So, Mark, I really like when we take these lists and walk and talk through each one. So you want to go ahead and nab that one on this one?
Let's do it.
All right.
And just a little bit to background, Anika, Pro-Publica, it's an independent nonprofit newsroom that does investigative journalism.
Oh.
And it's really, it's ironic that it's our first Pro-Publica article, because I think next week's is Pro-Publica as well. So we got a few coming up from them.
Well, that's interesting. You say that because I remember she's saying, and they did not want to give comment on this article.
Yes.
Yeah, they were straight investigating. Okay.
So listeners, this is exciting. So the name of this article is called The Admissions Arm Race, 6 Ways Colleges Game Their Numbers. And, this is an older article. Nick and I normally don't go back this far, but this was just really good, and it just really talks about the manipulation that happens. So I'll start out, I'll read a little bit, and you can give me a comment, and then we'll just keep it going. So It says, as college-bound students weigh their options, they often look to various stats that universities trumpet, things like higher applications, higher test scores, low acceptance rate. But what students may want to consider, yet another piece of information, is the ways in which schools pump up their stats. Quote, there's no question about it, says David Calsbeek, Senior VP of Enrollment Management and Marketing at DePaul. There are ways of inflating a metric to improve the perceived measures of quality. And I'm very passionate about this subject, because this happens all the time.
Years later after this article.
Some of these tweaks, such as more streamlined application, can actually benefit students. Others serve to make the admission process more confusing. Here's a rundown. All right, so first one, number 1, quickie, often pre-filled out applications. Express applications, sometimes known as fast apps, snap apps, VIP apps, or priority apps, pre-filled with some student information already in it, requiring very little, if anything, in the way of essays, and especially when they're accompanied with an application fee waiver. What's a student got to lose? Not much, fans of fast apps argue. The school, meanwhile, has a lot to gain. This tactic, designed to broaden the pool of applicants, can help to supercharge application numbers. 2 schools, Drexel University and St. John's, 2 colleges among the top 10 for the most applied to colleges in the year this came out, both market broadly using fast apps. Both colleges received around 50,000 applications, according to U.S. News data. Both schools enroll 3,000 freshmen. And then it says the opposite view is this. Getting in more applications can also boost the appearance of selectivity. Critics contend some schools use these fast apps specifically for this purpose, luring students in to apply to institutions they haven't even heard of, and then ultimately rejecting some of them. Neither school, when contacted, talking about Drexel and St. John's, responded to our request for comment. What say you, Anika?
I say that's not a bad thing. Good for us. Fast applications, I'm not mad at that. Let us fill them out quickly. I'm okay with that. But I get it. I mean, it's just the way that they're inflating. I know.
So the downside, and we've talked about these quite a few times before, right? Because they promise super quick, super easy, and no app fee. And a lot of times what this didn't say is money, likely to get 20,000 for 30,000, whatever, based on your outstanding. And then they also give you prestige, like you're one of the most outstanding applicants we've come across this year, and we think blah, 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 right? It's a lot like the scholarship societies we discussed a few weeks ago. So it sounds like you have no issue with this at all. No beefs, nothing?
I don't. I really
So one
don't.
thing I don't like about these is that they can over and promise, they can inflate, make it look like you're absolutely a shoo-in. You're one of the top applicants in our applicant pool.
How so, though? How so?
How so? Can they say that, or how do they know that information? Which one?
Well, no, how are they making you feel like you're in the top rank of something?
Well, because of what they say, they don't. It's not just like you get an application, right? It's like all dressed up with the bow. Like that says, as a result of the fact that you're one of the most extraordinary students in our database, we are offering you waiving the app fee, waiving the essay, eligibility for $25,000 in scholarship aid. So they can overpromise because they want your application. And sometimes they're just trying to get you in the applicant pool and trying to get you to visit because they like you. Sometimes they're just trying to build up their applications and they're going to turn around and deny you. And so it's like pure marketing. Like, we just want to get your application so we can deny you.
Okay. I didn't realize it was adding all those, fake incentives to it. I thought it was just making it easier to fill out the application, like minimal essays and pre-filled out, information. Oh.
So sometimes they really do that to kids who have like extremely high test scores. So it's not always that it's disingenuous. Like they really may think, oh, this looks
I got you. Okay.
But sometimes they're doing it because they want to be able to have more applications so they can have a lower acceptance rate and deny more kids. And sometimes they're doing it because some schools actually list their average SAT scores of their applicants, not who they enroll. So when you get all these, if you target, because you can buy lists of names from the College Board and the ACT based on test scores, right? So then you can say our average applicant had a 1490 and a 34 ACT. And meanwhile, like the average kid you admitted had like a 1220 and like a 28 ACT. Follow me? But they can make themselves look more selective. So
shady. Okay.
I don't like that part of it at all.
Shady. Okay. What's the next one?
Should we move on to number 2? Or you want to say anything else on that one?
No, we're Gucci on
that.
that.
Moving?
But yeah, it was fast on the fast apps.
All right. Fast on the fast apps. I like it. All right. Number 2, shorter applications. Common apps, shorter common apps. Another way to get more apps is to adopt the common application. And here at the time it was written, it said 500 colleges to take the Common App. Since it came in 1975, we know it's over 800 now.
Okay.
But anyway, the form, which lets students apply to multiple schools at once, has fueled a long-term rise in applications. And as more colleges have adopted it, others have felt pressure to start using it. Many colleges long required that students submit the Common App include additional answers or essays, what we call specific essays, supplemental essays, institutional essays, right? Dropping this extra requirement can cause a spike in apps. That's what happened for Skidmore, which saw a 42% jump in apps right after they stopped requiring the supplemental essay. Skidmore Dean of Admission did not respond to a request for an interview. What are your thoughts about this, Anika? It's another way of making it easier to apply. Drop any additional essay requirements and add the Common App. What do you think?
Well, yeah, that again makes our lives easier. But you reminded me that this article is a couple years old. So I was like, oh, that 500 number is kind of low. But the 800 number is still kind of low to me. I would assume there's almost the majority of schools are on that common application.
No.
Okay. I just didn't know that. So
now here's the thing. The Common App has 50 international universities in 18 countries. So it's truly not just a U.S. thing right now.
Oh, okay. Didn't know that.
But if you think that there are 2,600 accredited for-year schools approximately, it's about 1 in every 3. So, still a lot. And if you were to look at the most selective schools, Anika, it's going to be like 95% of them.
So do you think that some of those schools join the Common App portal just for that reason, just to get more applications?
Absolutely. That's one of the biggest reasons why they join. Because students, it's so much easier to fill out an application. And people add schools, you're on the Common App already, so I just have to fill a few things out and off it goes. It's less work. That's a major reason why they join the Common App, is you're going to get more applications. I mean, schools like University of Chicago, Georgia Tech, and I could go on and on. They just exploded in their applications when they went to the Common App. In fact, the reason why University of Georgia is not going, a few highly selectives not on the Common App, the reason they say they're not going on it is because they don't want crazy, outrageous, unrealistic volume to have to handle in their office.
Okay. Well, still, I'm not mad at it. Easier for us. Thank you, Common App.
What's controversial is whether it's in your best interest to drop college-specific essays.
Oh, okay.
And the reason for that is, Skidmore got 42% more apps when they got rid of any other additional essay requirements, right? So, you're getting more applications. You could argue you're putting people into your potential applicant pool. Your selectivity numbers are going to look good from a marketing standpoint. Your acceptance rate's going to go down. But what you're now doing is you're doing a lot of work reading all those files that you have to read, going to committee, discussing all these kids for a bunch of kids that are probably really not that interested in you. And you're not going to get anyway.
All right.
So this is a hot debate. Like, take WashU this year in St. Louis. They did the opposite. They added additional writing requirements because they wanted to see who was serious about them. And their applications dropped by 18%.
Was that painful for them, or were they okay? They expect that?
They said they're perfectly fine with that. So in other words, some schools would rather have less apps, but the ones that apply, they feel you're serious because you had to work a little bit to show us. And it's kind of almost a demonstrated interest test. And it allows them to concentrate all their file reading and whatever recruitment strategy on people that really probably are genuinely interested, right? That's why Georgetown has their own app. That's why MIT has their own app. They're not on the Common App. That's the reason they'll tell you is one of the, show us you're serious about us. They'll also say they have their own questions they want to ask, but
make sense.
Yeah. What do you think? Did we talk that one out enough?
I think so. But by the way, I love WashU.
I know, great school.
So smart over there.
I am on tomorrow with their admissions team.
Oh, really?
I'm doing a session with them. Yep.
Oh, tell them I said hi. I love them. I wish Jalen went there, but we didn't. Sorry.
Davidson people listen, so you better be careful.
No shade, Davidson. Thank you for all of your awesome work.
So just for those who are listening, WashU also offered Jalen, and he visited, and Anika fell in love. She wanted to go there, but Davidson.
Man. Yeah, all good. Okay, next one.
All right. Number 3, dipping into early application pools. All right. Do you want to read this one, Anika? Or do you want me to read it?
Yeah, I didn't understand the bad thing about this. isn't that what the early application pools are for? Is to draw for them because those are the people that are serious about or more serious about you, not so serious, but more
Well,
serious.
let me read it first so our listeners know what we're talking about. So it says,
Oh no! Let me do it. Let me
okay,
do
go
it,
ahead.
Mark.
Okay, yeah, go ahead,
You
read it.
always read. Let me
I know
be the
I
reader.
offered you to read it, but then I thought you were blowing me off, so I said, okay.
Nope.
Okay.
Let me do it.
Okay, read it.
Okay. One way to increase yields is to draw heavily from the pool of applicants who chose to apply through early action or to encourage early decision, which is binding. At the University of Pennsylvania, for instance, nearly half of the spots in the freshman class are filled through the university's binding early decision process. I thought that was pretty darn fascinating. But why is that like a gaming thing? Like, why is that not okay?
Okay. So this is what's very, very common, right, with schools, especially with early decision. So think about it this way. Let's say a school is taking 2,000 kids into their freshman class, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if they get a small number of early decision applications, let's say they get 4,000 early decision applications, and let's say they take 1 out of 4, so that's 1,000. Okay. With early decision, it's almost what we call a 1-for-1, meaning almost everybody that you admit is coming because it's binding, right?
They have to.
I mean, you can wiggle out of it if you say you can't pay financially, but they make it very, very hard because the school counselor has to sign that you're making a commitment. The student has to sign, the parent has to sign, and you're saying that you're going to withdraw all your other applications. So schools typically get about 97%, depending on the school, but usually around 97% of those who they admit will actually come. So what happens, though, is now you've gobbled up half of the slots for your school. So you had 2,000 openings and you took 1,000 right off the table right away. Now, in regular admission, this is when the numbers are substantially higher. So now you might have 30,000 people applying in regular for only 1,000 spots. So what it means is going to be a ridiculously low select acceptance rate in regular because all the spots got gobbled up, or not all, but so many slots got gobbled up in early.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I still don't see it as gaming, but okay. I believe it.
Well, it is gaming in a major way because the reason why it's gaming, this is maybe what you're missing, is overall, usually the early applicant pool is not as strong as the regular pool. So schools are taking kids who are not as strong, one, to guarantee that they please all stakeholders and have a balanced class, but also so that they can drive down their selectivity because they're all trying to get higher test scores, higher rankings, and lower acceptance rates.
Okay. I actually thought the opposite. I thought the early decision folks were like the top kids.
No, that's what a lot of times schools will tell you. And some of them are. Some of them are the top kids, right? And they're athletes. That's where you get your recruited athletes. That's where you get your alumni. Some of them are really strong. But there are also a lot of kids who know that, okay, I'm not going to get in this school probably unless I apply early. Because if I apply early, I know that because I'm making a commitment to them, they're going to value that. And they'll I mean, there was one study that came out years ago that showed it's worth at least 100 points on the SAT and between 100 and 150 points on the SAT to apply early. In other words, a kid that's like a 1240 early may be similar to like a kid that's like a 1360, 1370. All other things being equal in terms of grade point average and recommendations and ECs and essays and, grade trends and everything and curriculum.
Got it. Okay.
So this is a way. Are you following now? Because this is very important that you understand this. I get it. It's all crystal clear. I got you. Okay. But the point is, these are ways schools can game their stats, right? So I always call out Colorado College. Sorry, Colorado College, but 27% acceptance rate early, 5%. 5% in regular, Anika. 1 out of 20.
Wow.
And do you know that University of Chicago's acceptance rate in regular was around 1% last year? No, I'm serious. Because they took so many kids, they have both ED and EA. And they took so many kids, ED and EA, that basically gobbled up all the slots that if you applied regular, there pretty much was very, very, very few spots available. Tulane is another school that does this. So that's how they game their numbers. If you take such a high percentage early, knowing that most kids apply regular, now it's like a herd of people all trying to come in for this small number of spots.
Okay. All righty. On to the fourth one.
All right. This is the one I really want to talk about. Because you know why, Anika? We've talked about all of these other things to some extent on here. We haven't really talked about this much. And I was even thinking about doing a bonus episode on this because this is important. Rejecting good students, universities think are using them as a backup. So what it says here is, well, opening up early decision and early action programs is a way for colleges to force students to demonstrate that they're top choice. Schools use a variety of ways to divine the same information from regular students as well. Now, this is what we talked about before, tracking your online footprint and everything, right? This is perhaps the most common and in some ways common sense method used by colleges to improve your yield. Simply to admit only those students who you think will enroll. And then here's a quote from the VP of Enrollment at University of Dayton. She says, there are so many silent electronic footprints, they're always leaving nowadays. And she goes on to say that, I'm sorry, I said a she. It's actually a he, Sundar. Notice how I avoided that name, by the way? Did you see I did? I wasn't trying that name. It's a he. It's a he. So he said his institution tracks many of these subtle signals of interest from applicants. For example, they can tell whether an individual applicant has clicked to open email, whether they've logged into the system to check the status of an application, whether or not they have called the school. Check this out. How long the phone call lasted. Was it 30 seconds or 7 minutes? If the school gets the sense that an applicant isn't interested, that is factored in, and it's called recruiting for fit. And then it says the interest or the lack of interest can ultimately mean that the school rejects some candidates who on paper are more than qualified but fail to demonstrate interest. What do you think about this, Anika?
I think that we've been talking about these schools crying about, oh, we don't have time to do all this stuff. Y'all got a lot of time on your hands going through all these, how long you're staying on the phone.
No, but it's all done electronically now. There's all metrics that can be used. It's all, it's all sophisticated with technology.
Yeah, but somebody had to set it up. Still a lot of work in there. I don't care. It's just, I don't know.
See, let me tell you why this is interesting and at the same time disturbing. So if I'm working with a student, I'm working on building their college list, right? You know this, Anika. I'm going to make sure that you got some schools on there that are challenge schools, some schools on there that are possibles, some probables, and then some safeties, or one safety at least, right? The problem is what this is saying, and I see it every year, is that your probables or your safeties may turn around and deny you because they think you're not likely to come. And so if you don't get in your challenge schools or your possibles, then your probables or your safety don't take you, you're up a creek without a paddle.
But are the safeties going through all of this, though? I thought that safety was those schools that didn't have the capacity so much to go through all of this. Like they take the numbers, they crunch them, and then you're done.
Okay, so now you're being really very good at being precise about how I define a safety. I define a safety as a school that does admissions by the numbers. And so you know that you're in. But that's not how most people define it. Most people define it as a school that your stats are so overwhelmingly stronger than that you're more likely just to get admitted to.
Okay, gotcha.
So that's what I call a likely or a probable, right?
Okay.
And so, for example, last year I had 2 students who, I'm going to name names because I see this. Their statistics were so much stronger than who both Franklin and Marshall and American University normally. It's not just their statistics. I knew their whole file. I knew what their rec said. I knew what their essays, their extracurriculars. There's somebody those schools would love to have. But they deemed that they were not likely to come, and so they did not admit them. And I even followed up with one of them, and they said, yeah, I'm sorry, we do that. So this is just tricky because what it can do is it can add stress to a student because you think, okay, these are my schools that are my likelies, so I don't really have to sweat these out. I know I'm going to probably get in these. I'm not so sure about these others. And then you turn around and don't get in them because they figured out that you were basically using them as your backup date for the prom. And they said, oh, I figured out you're the backup date for the prom. Guess what? I'll show you. I just won't accept it.
That's kind of harsh.
Well, what it does, this is what it does. It forces people to basically have to play the game, which I hate to say. It means that you have to show love or show interest even to schools that you're not that interested in. But remember what we say, you're supposed to love your whole list and be willing to go anywhere.
That's right. That's right. Okay, we're on number 5 now?
Yep.
Okay.
You want to read it?
Test optional.
Mm-hmm.
So let me just read a little excerpt here. It says that tell me if I'm jumping ahead too much, but this part right here was fascinating. Lower scoring applicants are the most likely to withhold their scores, and higher scoring applicants are the most likely to submit them. Meaning, if a school is test optional, again, lower scoring kids are going to report. So that's going to make them look better because only the great kids are going to say, hey, we did all these great things, and they won't have to, merge those other lower numbers into their stats.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's pretty much it, right?
Yeah, exactly. But the way that this is the gamesmanship of the test optional movement. So last episode we talked about test optional, Nika, and you were celebrating it, and let me know if more schools don't require these tests, right? But a lot of times the reason why schools go test optional is because they can actually get more applications. Because all of a sudden low testers will be like, oh, I don't need to submit scores. I'm applying over there.
Right.
But they also can have higher average statistics because the only ones that do submit scores are the high ones. In fact, I have worked with schools, Anika, who would call, this is when I was at boarding school, this happened, doing college counseling. They reached out and said, you know what? We're interested in this kid if they'll apply test optional. In other words, we like this kid, but we don't want them bringing down our stats.
Oh my God.
I know. You think that's crazy?
So horrible.
Well, it's the reason why you think it's horrible, but what happens is this is the way you have to look at it. The public judges people by their stats. So they feel like if our stats go down, we're not going to be able to get a lot of the top applicants we want. So it's called protecting your profile. Everybody does it. They don't want to see their average numbers go down because they know that it will be harder to get the kids that they want to get.
I feel like you should use one of your dating scenarios there,
I think you might be tired of that.
This is a good one. I'll go out with you as long as we're not seen together.
There you go.
Got to go to a dark
good one.
movie.
I like that. You need to start using that. That's exactly what it is.
OMG.
That's exactly what it is. I'll go out with you as long as we're not seen together, right? That's exactly what it is.
Terrible. Oh my God.
Hey, as long as the kid gets in and gets in a school they like and they get the money, they need money.
Well, you know what? That's a fact. I'll take it. I'm not gonna lie. I probably will be upset for a minute. I'll be in my feelings for a minute, but I'll get over it. But
here's the context. Okay. We're talking about how schools game their numbers. So I will look at I'll look at a school. We've always prided ourselves on being or just not holding back, right? So I'm going to talk about a school, Pitzer College. Very good school, Claremont Colleges, Claremont, California. They're test optional. One of the things I like to look at when I look at a test optional school, how many people actually reported scores? Because there are test optional schools where 80% of people still submit scores. I mean, University of Chicago went test optional, but over 85% of kids still submitted scores. But at Pitzer, a very high percentage of kids don't submit scores. So when you look at the Pitzer test scores, people might be like, wow, those are high. Well, I've seen Pitzer take kids with like abysmal scores because they never got to see the scores. And a high percentage are not submitting. So the whole point of this article, these are ways schools make the numbers look better than they really are.
Okay, final one. This is hilarious. Making stuff up.
But it's true. Why don't you read this one?
Just flat out. You know what? I didn't even mark this one up. That was so hilarious. Okay. I just put that in all caps.
Okay.
So please remind me what they said.
I'll read this one. Some colleges actually cross the line with their creative number crunching. Well, this is a little bit older article. Last year, 5 colleges have acknowledged overstating their admission stats. Bucknell, Claremont McKenna, Emory, George Washington, and Tulane Business School. And remember, we talked about Temple fudging their business rankings. We did an article on that, right? Admissions data is self-reported and no outside party is responsible for verifying it. The recent scandals involve falsifying data have only come to light after colleges self-disclosed the problem. U.S. News' Robert Morse has said there's no reason to believe that this misreporting is widespread, but a survey of Inside Higher Ed last fall suggests that even admissions directors are very skeptical of the stats they see. 91% of people surveyed said they believe that there's misreporting that's going on out there that's not being identified. So in other words, when you can't, through all these other tactics, make yourself look better, make stuff up.
Well, admissions people, they need new titles. We need to just call y'all strategists. Yeah, that's your new title, college strategist, because that's straight. All y'all are doing all day is strategizing how to get these numbers up and more kids applying, not so much admitted. But
Well, I want to say one thing, and this is important, Anika.
mm,
Schools are so convinced that if they have almost intimidatingly high numbers, like our average ACT is 32 to 35 or whatever, right? Or our acceptance rate, let's say they may say something like, we got 7,000 apps for 500 spots. They didn't admit 700. I mean, they got 7,000 apps for 500 spots. People think, oh my goodness, you took like 1 out of 14? No, they're not saying that. They might have admitted 3,000 of those 7,000, but only 500 came. But that's not how they present it. So schools do so many things to make their numbers look higher that a lot of times it doesn't serve them well, because a lot of times I'll talk to students and they're intimidated. They're like, oh my goodness, look at those numbers. I may as well not even apply. But what's interesting to me is school after school after school does this, which indicates that they're that confident that the trade-off of having eye-popping numbers is worth the people that it intimidates and keeps from even applying.
Sad, but reality. Sad reality. How about that?
I think people need to realize is that this is marketing big time, big time, big time, big time. Schools are educational missions and they want to help people, but they can't help people if they can't attract students, and they will market the heck out of themselves to get students.
Now it's time for our step-by-step walkthrough of the college admissions process.
All right, friends, we are in 81th episode. 81st, 81th. I said 81th.
Is that sleepy talk, Mark?
Oh, my goodness. Okay, what 81st episode, therefore the 81st chapter of my book, and it is entitled, What Are Some Common Mistakes Made by International Students Who Are Applying to U.S. Colleges? Anika, what were a couple takeaways that you had? You read the chapter.
Yeah, I mean, you had a great list, and I jotted down 4 that were most interesting to me.
Sure.
The first one is overlooking that there might be an international admissions counselor, like someone dedicated to you, an international student, to help you through the whole process. So don't be alone in that journey if you don't have to be. How about that? Starting the I-20 visa? Am I saying that right? The passport requirements too late. I know could be painful. Oh my goodness.
Correct.
So that was a big one. Yeah. And then one of the most interesting was that international students tend to focus on prestigious schools, insisting on going in the Northeast schools and refusing rural schools. However, I mean, I want you to add a little more context to that, but what's wrong with refusing rural schools? Because you know how I feel about rural. You know how Ned feels about rural. We don't want to do rural. So why is that a bad thing?
Yeah. And I understand that, because if you're just going to be completely miserable, why would you do it? Right. And that's the point you're making. International students are, first of all, a lot of them come from places where if it doesn't have the word university behind it, they're not going to go. Because in a lot of cultures, college is equivalent to high school. So it could be, doesn't matter, Davidson, Williams, Amherst, Pomona, one of these really prestigious ones, doesn't matter. It says college. In my mind, that's high school.
Right.
My saddest story I ever had about this, Anika, I was working with an international student doing boarding school admissions. And he'd gotten into Swarthmore College. It's one of the most selective schools in the country, right? He was so proud of himself for getting in. And actually had gotten an award. And his dad came over from another country. And he showed his dad Swarthmore and toured him. And he was so enthusiastic. You could tell he was just trying to make his dad proud. And then his dad said, this Swarthmore is actually better than I thought. You might be able to transfer to Harvard from here.
Oh.
Yeah, and he was just deflated. So, but it's really, really hard when working with certain international students from certain countries to get them to go to anything that says college. Like it could be a school that's way, way, way less selective, like a state school, but if it has the word university behind it, it may not even be that selective. They'll be more likely to go there. That's just part of the culture.
Wait, do they have admissions people helping them where they are? Like to debunk some of that? Or I guess maybe they feel the same way too. I don't know.
I mean, it's just hard. If you've grown up and the word college means high school in your culture, It's not that easy to get that out of your mind.
Well, I shouldn't have said admissions. I should have said they're high school counselors. Like, I wonder how versed they are in the culture of the United States. Like, it seems like they should be trying to. I mean, it is 2019.
Yeah, but I mean, look at the lack of counseling in this country about this country. So think about if you're coming 3,000 miles away.
I get it.
Anika and I are so grateful for everyone who has financially supported our podcast. It allows us to pay our staff and cover our other auxiliary expenses involved in having a weekly professional podcast.
At the start of every month, we're going to start sending a special gift to anyone who financially supports your college-bound kid.
I will be sending our donors this bonus content once a month directly to your email. The bonus content will be between 10 to 15 minutes in length. Usually it will be a college-related topic that I'm passionate about. Occasionally, it'll be another bonus hot topic in the news segment. Sometimes it'll be an answer to a question that one of our listeners submits to us via email.
And you'll receive these monthly audio blogs for a gift of any amount. We know that $5,000 to one person is $5 to someone else, and we don't want your budget to be a hindrance to you receiving this additional bonus content. So if you want to support our show, just go to yourcollegeboundkid.com and click the donate button. And if you've already financially supported our podcast, you will automatically start receiving this bonus content via your email.
This bonus content is our way of letting our financial supporters know in a tangible way how much we appreciate you. And if you have any questions at all about our monthly bonus content, just send your questions our way. That's to questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com. Once again, questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com. So that was 3, didn't you? You had a 4th one you liked?
Yeah, the 4th one was paying attention to how many students from your country are applying and being admitted to that specific school that, to whatever schools you're looking at. So I actually had a question around that. So are you saying if I'm Chinese and I look at this school and there are 5,000 Chinese students applying, that should be discouraging to me? Or are you saying that I should be encouraged by that because I will have a community there? Or what angle is that?
It's a great question. So you remember I've said something all over and over, Nika. Colleges want what they don't have.
Mm-hmm.
And so if a school has an inordinate number of Chinese students, let's say Chinese, because I don't know if you know this, Anika, but students from China and India comprise half of all international students that are in the U.S. Yeah, it's like 33% of all students are from China and 17% are from India. And the next largest country is like 6%.
Oh,
you get down to Canada, Saudi Arabia, Korea. Those are like 4 to 6% in those countries. Okay. So now these numbers are starting to change because of what's going on politically here. In the last couple of years, a lot of these people are like not coming over here. Mm-hmm. But if you are applying to a school that has an inordinate number of students from your country background, and if it's a selective school, you just need to realize that the bar is likely to be higher for you. Mm-hmm. You need to not be naive about that, because it's unlikely that they want to be, say, 50% Chinese. I'm just use China, so I'll just go with it. Mm-hmm. It's unlikely that they want to do that. They won't necessarily consider that to be diverse. They're trying to have all different cultures. So the standard just is going to be higher. Now, this is not always the case, because if we're talking about schools that crunch numbers and makes decisions by numbers, this won't apply. But it's something to be aware of and to be cognizant of. Mm-hmm. In the chapter, I said that according to independent educational consultant Ellen Richards, 10 years ago, 17 Chinese students applied to the University of Virginia. 3 years ago, 177 applied. This year, 800 applied.
Wow.
3 years ago, 16 Chinese students applied to Brown. This year, 500 applied. So they went from 16 to 500.
Goodness.
And so I'm just saying, like, you just need to know, when it was 16, it might have been, oh man, we're getting diversity that we don't have. Mm-hmm. When it's 500, now they're saying, okay, how you stack up compared to these other 500. And that's just, people don't like to hear this, but most schools that do holistic admissions is basically social engineering. Mm-hmm. They have in mind what they would think would be a really nice, diverse mix. And so there is an aspect of which that whatever bucket they put you in, that's who you're competing with. Now, it doesn't mean the only thing they see is you, the Chinese student, because let's say you're phenomenal in some other thing, then you can like, people are in multiple buckets, right? let's say you are strong enough to be on the traveling math team and to compete for like a Putnam Math Championship, then, you could be like, okay, this is one of our strongest math students in our entire applicant pool. So now you go in that bucket. Or let's say you're applying for what we call an undersubscribed major, and hardly anybody's applying for that major, and the school's in danger of the major dying out. Now you can also go in that bucket. So you not only in one bucket, but you do get put into buckets, and you get compared to people who are in your bucket. That's how holistic admissions works.
All right. Okay.
So you named your big ones.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? I think that's enough for this. I mean, I could comment on a lot more, but one thing I'll say is it is really good for international students to connect with the International Educational Office on campus, as well as the international student groups on campus. That's really, really a missed opportunity for those who don't do that. And so I'll just throw that in, and let's keep it moving and head on over to our last section.
Sounds good.
It's time for a question from one of our listeners.
All right. Our question this week, Mark, comes from Cheryl in Alabama. I'm going to read Cheryl's awesome email here. She says, I'm a big fan of your podcast. Thank you for teaching us how to go through the college admissions process. Thank you, and you're welcome, Cheryl. Mark's knowledge is invaluable, and Anika's questions and comments help me digest what Mark is saying. It is nice to hear from a parent who has been through the process once and is going through it again. Girl, and I'll be going through it again in about 4 more years with little Mr. John. So help me, Jesus, Lord. Okay, so Cheryl goes on to say, I recently heard it might be beneficial for high school students to set up a LinkedIn profile and provide a link to it on the college applications, which allow web links. The idea is that the student can use LinkedIn to basically share a resume, and they can link to employers and professionals in their intended career major and start networking for internships. Also, LinkedIn can be used to link to professors they have met or are interested in meeting at schools they have visited or are intending to apply. Sounds like Cheryl answered her own question, but this is what she said. So her question is, I understand college students are encouraged to do this. So if a high school senior does it, will it be helpful? What do you think, Mark?
Okay, so I'll present the case against it very briefly and the case for it. So the case against it is what one New York Times writer dubbed, specifically talking about LinkedIn, the careerization of childhood. In other words, can we let these kids grow up a little bit before we got them already into professional, and like this whole thing is just happening way too soon, and just let them be kids.
I appreciate him for saying that. Goodness, thank you.
You like that? You like that view?
I do.
And so that's one of the cases against it. Like, it's just let kids be kids and don't start to get them into thinking that way too soon. Another thing that I'll say, this applies to my own kids, like this has to kind of come from the kid. It can't come from the parents.
Right.
Because I did talk to both of my kids about using LinkedIn, and neither one of them had any interest at 16 and 17. They just didn't. So that's another thing that I'll say, like it has to kind of come from the kid, not from the parent. On the other hand, there are some compelling things about LinkedIn. I'm a huge LinkedIn fan. I like it on a lot of different levels potentially for a high school applicant. I love it. One of the things that you can find out with LinkedIn, almost every admissions rep is up there. So, you want to find out more about the territory manager for your area, go in and read about them and look at their LinkedIn profile. You will learn a lot. And you'll actually learn things that if you haven't had a chance to interact with them, it will give you points of commonality that you can touch on, just understanding their background, what they majored in, other schools they've gone to, because you get a wide mixture of people in admissions. You get people that have been careerists. You get people who are just out of college. You get people that this is their second or third jobs. Like having that knowledge of their background I find that's really, really helpful, especially if you're going to be meeting and interacting them. And remember, this is a person who's going to read your file and have a lot of input on your file. So they're very helpful that way. Also, a lot of the colleges nowadays are having their own college admission pages. So you can read information and explore colleges, particularly ones that have set up pages. So it's great that way. It's also great to do research on professors. Another really good thing. But I'll tell you what I like about LinkedIn more than anything, and this is where I'm huge on it, is your ability to use it for internships. So you remember, Anika, when we had Stephanie Espy on our podcast? in episode 9, and she
Mhm.
talked about her book STEM Gems.
STEM gems.
You bought it, STEM Gems, 44
I sure did.
leading women in science and technology fields, right? So what
Mhm.
Stephanie did in this amazing book, she went out and she got 44 women in 44 different math science fields, and she got like she went out and found like the leader of the leaders, like who's the big dog out there, the number one person in each field. And then she said, I want to profile you in my book. Well, how did she find all 44 of these people? LinkedIn. She went to LinkedIn, reached out to them through LinkedIn, and she got 44 out of 44 to commit to be in her book and be profiled.
Wow.
So one thing I'm really big on for students, we haven't talked about that this much on this podcast, Anika. We probably need to talk about it more. A lot of times people think a college degree is just a panacea. It's just automatically going to just open up all these, this is just going to part the Red Sea.
Mhm.
And I don't believe that. I believe you need to have a strategy of getting a job.
Right.
And a huge part of your strategy is going to be internships.
Right.
And so what is a great way? Okay, look up alumni at a school you're interested in and reach out to them with a little message, a little side message, and say, I'm interested in da-da-da-da-da. Would you consider allowing me to come for shadow day? Or I'd love to meet you. That stuff works.
Yep.
And in the college admission process, you can use it to interact with alumni if you want to get an alumni perspective.
Wow.
So the bottom line is, I think LinkedIn is amazing, but it needs to be somebody who wants to do this. Now, I also want to say this. A recent, not too recent of a study, but yeah, not too long ago, Kaplan did a study of 400 people, and they 400 college admissions officers, and 40% of them said that if someone included a link, a social media link, they were going to click it and open it.
Okay.
So now this can vary from school to school. It can vary based on how much time each school has to read an app. It can vary from one admissions rep to another at the same school, because most of the time admission directors aren't going to dictate to you and say, if there's a social media link, click it. They're really not.
All right.
They're going to leave that up to the individual reader. The director is just going to want you to read the applications well and stay on the time. You always have a time schedule as a reader. You need to be reading a certain number of apps to stay on pace for them to get everything done. As long as you're reading your apps well and you stay on pace that they outline how many you need to do, they don't really care whether you check the social media or not. So it can vary from rep to rep.
Right.
But LinkedIn can be a way of showing your interest. If they click your profile, it can show a little bit about your depth and your professional interest, and it can show a little bit about your network. I mean, social media can be social proof. So I don't want everybody out here thinking they need to go do all this as a way to get in and all this. I prefer it more as primarily as an internship getting strategy, because I think it's amazing for that. But for the student that wants to do it, I see great value to it. What do you think?
Wait, so I'm a little confused. So are you saying that because she's talking about her high school senior? So what I heard you say was the research is, using it as a research tool. You weighed in heavily on that, right? Learn about your professors or your admissions officers, their backgrounds and all that stuff. And then you talk about internships. To me, that sounds like the current college student, looking for internships. Looking for internships?
Yeah. So do you remember when we had Ann Jean on talking about her dental career? She started in high school, started with shadow days, started with internships. You don't have to start that stuff in college.
Yeah,
you can start that stuff right now at 16, 17, 18.
But I'm just thinking, well, I could be wrong. And I'm sorry, Cheryl, if I misread your question, but to me, it was more so, okay, the strategy for getting into school. Is this a recommended strategy to get into my college?
No, she did say that. It can help if people are going to click the links and if you're going to show well. It's not going to be the definitive thing. I mean, it's not some panacea. Remember, your transcript is going to be the most important thing in your file.
Right.
Your grades, your courses. Okay. For some schools, your testing will be second. For other schools, your recommendations will be second. Okay. And then for some schools, your extracurriculars are going to be up there. But it doesn't hurt, because ultimately, one thing that admission reps do like is they do like to try to get an authentic sense of who you really are. And that's why the whole Zeme app is taken off, and it gives you a visual portrayal. And there are a lot of admission officers, and I talk to them, that do find it valuable to snoop around a little bit in social media. They can learn a different side of a student than they get in other parts of the application. Now, they have so little time. So most of the time when the reps and I talk to that do that, they're like, this is why I don't stay on pace with my reading, because I go off on a 10-minute social media. I get curious, like, what's behind that box? So, yeah. So if now some people get into this whole strategy aspect that I don't really like. So some people recommend things like go on and follow the colleges that are on your list and post something positive about them. I'm not going to do all that manipulation stuff that, I'm just not going to coach my families to do all that. I'm just not. I'm sorry.
Yeah, thanks.
You know what I mean? Like you're trying to play them while they play you.
Right.
So as a college admission strategy, it can help. It's a minor factor. To me, the real value is to beginning to develop your professional network at an early age. But the bottom line is a kid ready for this? Or is it pulling teeth to try to get him to do it? That's my bottom line.
Ooh-wee. Yeah. Good luck, Cheryl.
Anything else you want to throw in there, Anika?
LinkedIn is a lot of work. Think about, like you said, you just hit the nail on the head. It's like, how much work is that kid willing to do, and how much should he have to do, and how much do we want that child to breathe just a little bit? But, every household, every child is different. So I think you know where you stand with your own kid.
Yeah, and this is why I like it a lot more along the lines of using it to confirm that you're on the right career path. If you kind of trying to figure out, like, Janaea, do I want to be a vet? Do I want to do something else? Well, you know what I mean? That's a great way. If you don't have other ways of tapping into a network like that, it can be a great way to meet people.
Right.
It can also be a great way to just talk to alumni if you're a hardcore researcher of a school and you want to talk to some alum.
Yeah.
Because the data in LinkedIn is better than a lot of the data that alumni offices have, because people update their professional profile before they go tell their school about their changes. So they tend to have really current information of where you're working, new advanced degrees you've got. It tends to be very, very good research.
Okay.
And now, this week's interview with a special guest.
Okay, friends, Chika Nwosu is our interview for today. And the reason you're going to hear from her is because we had one of our listeners who came on and said, you know what I'd love for you guys to do? Can you interview a student when they first start the college process? Can you interview them just before they go to college? And can you interview them after a year of college? And we said, you know what, let's do that. So Chika was on, I believe it was episode 38. Pretty sure that was right. And at that point, she literally was just picking her list. And now she's back to tell about all her schools. She's very transparent. Where she got in, where she didn't get in. What were the visits like? What did she like? What did she not like? And where is she going next year? So we get great feedback when we have students on from time to time. And I think you're going to enjoy Chika Nwosu part 2. And we'll have her back in a year or so for part 3. Good evening, Chika. How are you?
Hello. Good evening, Mr. Stucker. I'm good. How are you?
Great. For our regular listeners, you will know that Chika is back. So we had one of our listeners send us a request. They said, can you have a student come on before they pick their schools, after they've picked their college they're going to, and after a year of college? And there's nobody who lights up a room with a smile like Chika. So I had to ask Chika, because that smile comes through in that warmth. And so Chika was with us back on episode 38, back on October 20th. And why don't you give a little bit of a recap about what you shared in that first appearance, Chika? Because this is part 2 of the Chika trilogy. Sounds like a movie or something.
Well, in part 1, I kind of just shared a little bit about myself. I live with my mom and my grandma, my sister, and my mom, she's a dentist. And for me personally, want to grow up and I want to become a dermatologist and kind of give back to my community. And just academically wise, I'm involved in my school. I'm the vice president of leadership for NHS, the National Honor Society, and I'm the senior class president for student council. And I'm in this club called GSLT, which is like a Gwinnett student leadership team. It's a leadership club for my county, and I kind of represent my school with 2 other girls. And then I'm also the president of Talon, which is like the big leadership club at my school. And I would say that I'm fairly high achieving for like academically. I'm 40 in my class out of about 850 students. And for my SAT, I did score 1440 one sitting, and that was my highest score. So
good for you. Good for you. Now, one thing that people probably don't know, or especially our first timers, is Gwinnett is a suburban Atlanta, right? So how far do you live from Atlanta, Chika?
maybe about like 45 minutes to an hour, no traffic.
You better throw no traffic in, because with traffic, you're probably talking double, right?
Yeah, low-key, yes.
Awesome. All right. So tell us a little bit more about what your high school is like.
It is a fairly large high school. I think it is the largest in Gwinnett County, of about just under 4,000 kids. And I truly do love my high school. I go to Mill Creek High School, and there's just so much diversity in terms of like, there's so many ways students can get involved with fine arts, with sports, with academics and leadership and serving. Because our principal, he also works with us in GSLT. And so he always helps us to try to grow a leadership culture at my high school, which I love.
Thank you. That is awesome. All right. So back in the first episode, Chika gave us a little bit of a background. She did a little brief recap. And before I follow up with you a little bit more about your college process, why don't you share a few highlights from your senior year, other than the college process?
I guess for me, senior year, the highlights were just, I don't know what it is, but it's so weird that senior year, you always find the people you wish you found freshman year. I just found so many people that share my same interests, who are interested in like leadership, and just GSLT 2 is my final year. So it was just all of us collectively working to make the last changes in our school to leave our little legacy in our high school. So that was really kind of just the highlight of high school, was just GSLT and all the new friends that I wish I met so many years ago.
All right. So I know you're used to just rambling off GSLT, but I'm going to ask you to do the long form, because I've been working with you for a year. And every time you say GSLT, I'm like, Gwinnett, leadership, I'm trying to think in my mind. So if you can give the long form, I'm just humorous with that. And
yeah,
you're at a big school, by the way, Chika. 850. Did you say 855?
Yeah.
Like, there are so many students I work with that they don't have 855 in their whole high school, let alone in their class. Well, good for you. Now, life's not perfect. So what would be maybe a low light of your senior year, if there's anything you're comfortable sharing?
Besides the college process, I wouldn't even say there's really low points of senior year, just more like bittersweet moments. So I've been playing varsity tennis at my high school since freshman year. And so just being a senior on the team, and it's my last year. So senior year is just full of laughs. So my last first match, my last match, my last banquet, my last opportunity to influence the school and stuff like that. So I would just say for me, it was the last of senior year that kind of was just like, I'm actually leaving.
Well, there's social media and there's reunions. There's reunions. So that just means you're going to have to come back and see everybody. That's what that means. But I totally understand that. So let's talk a little bit about, where did you decide to apply? I probably should give a little bit of background. Chika and I have been working together for about a year. You came to me later than most students do. You were referred by another client of mine who also is a dentist. And one of the biggest things that we worked on was building your college list. So if you hated these schools, you can be mad at me. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about where you decided to apply, and maybe briefly describe, other than my recommendation, because you remember I said research these schools, right? She can come back to me with the ones you liked.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. So, you had buy-in. Like, I might have recommended it, but I needed you to vet it and say, this looks like it might be Chika. So why don't you share where you applied and maybe why?
So I applied to the University of Miami in Florida because you recommended it to me. You recommended all these schools to me, like you said. But I kind of went along with this one because it was in a warmer area, which I now know that I like. And it has a really good pre-med program and medicine program. And that was really interesting to me. I also applied to Mercer, which my mom loves Mercer because it's so close to home, and they have their own medical school, and they have a really strong pre-med program. So that was very enticing for me. And they give good scholarships from what you told me and I saw. I also applied to Case Western, which is a little bit up north, which at the time I didn't realize that. I'm not a fan of super cold weather, but they are a big research school. And they also are very generous in terms of like merit-based scholarships, which was really important to me. I applied to Baylor in Texas, which was a little bit farther than I originally thought I was going to be comfortable with. But just because of the academic, like the pre-med program, how strong it was, I was like, this is something that I need to go after. I also applied to UGA, which is just, it's close to home. I have Zell Miller, that kind of school. I applied to Emory just because I live in Georgia and I'd get some money from the state as well. And I'm close to home and they have the CDC and Emory Medical School and stuff like that. I applied to UNC Chapel Hill, which used to be, when I was younger, my number one school that I really, really wanted to go to. And they have a good, strong pre-med program. I think for most of these schools, the main thing that drew me in was their strong pre-med program. So like Wake Forest, Oberlin, Vanderbilt, all of them have really strong pre-med programs that I really was enticed by. I also applied to Washington University in St. Louis, which was a little bit colder. I didn't realize the geography of that school, but they also have an incredibly strong pre-med program, which was very enticing, as well as Davidson, which was a favorite for me for really since last year, and as well as Duke.
Awesome. And so altogether, was that 12? What was your number total? Do you know?
I think it was 13.
Okay, so I tell everybody 7 to 13 is usually my range for people. There's no magic number. You came in on the high side of that. Normally, if money is involved, it'll be a little bit on the higher side. You know, Chika, because you want to go on to medical school and because you have a sibling, money was something we did look at. And also, you weren't going to really qualify for any financial aid. But because you're looking at the big picture, financially, you wanted to try to go somewhere where your mom didn't have to pay like $70,000, right?
Correct. That'd be a lot.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you, and just for those people thinking, why are you cruel? What are you being so cruel putting Chika on the spot? So Chika, why don't you share which schools on that list you were accepted or admitted to?
So I was accepted into Vanderbilt, Oberlin, Wake Forest, UNC Chapel Hill, Emory of Oxford, the University of Georgia, Baylor University, Case Western Reserve University, Mercer University, and the University of Miami.
That's a lot of acceptances. What was that, like 10 or 11? 10
that
at
was
least?
10, yeah.
10?
Yeah.
All right. So I know this may be a little bit personal, but do you mind sharing where you were not admitted?
No problem. Nobody's perfect, though. I was not accepted to the Washington University in St. Louis, as well as I was waitlisted at Duke and then sort of denied, but then asked if I wanted to be on the wait list for Davidson.
Okay, great. So you did exceptionally well to get into all of those schools. Why do you think you did so well in the admission process?
Well, with your help, that really helped my chances for sure. But I think it was really your advice that you gave me, because I think academically, I'm a fairly competitive student for the admission process, but just in this day and age, it's just not on your academics alone that will get you into these colleges. And I think my extracurricular activities in terms of like leadership and how much I've poured into my community in high school through my 4 years, you just helping me to like pour that into my personal essays and stuff like that. I think that's really is what sealed the deal for a lot of these schools for me.
And I think because I think you're being a little modest here, I think your extracurriculars were outstanding, especially the leadership that you had, not just within your school, but even in the county. And I also think that your teachers and your counselors love you. And they were extremely enthusiastic about writing letters on your behalf. And I think that really helped you. And I do think that I think you came up with some really strong essays as well.
Yeah.
So those are some of the things that I think helped you separate yourself, because the truth of the matter is everybody in those applicant pools have the test scores like, around like where you were like around 1,500 and high GPA and, a lot of times impressive extracurriculars.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. So this is personal, but how did you handle not getting into those three schools, especially Davidson? Because before you met me, I know Davidson was like your top choice before we even met. So how do you feel you handled that? And I know that's really a personal question, but I hope you don't mind me asking.
Oh, no, it's no problem. I'm going to be honest. It was very, very hard on me. Just because it's going into the college process, I was like, Davidson is my number one. I have to go to Davidson. It's Davidson or nothing. There's no questions asked. And I guess just when I was creating my list and visiting these other schools, I kind of saw what other colleges have to offer me. And especially just because financially alone, Davidson was a little bit on the higher side. So for me, it was, I need to get their full ride Belk scholarship, or even if I did get acceptance, I wasn't going to be able to go. So I kind of hit me in stages, because when I didn't get the Belk scholarship, that's when I had to come to terms that like I wasn't going to be able to go to Davidson regardless of whether I'm accepted or not. So when they finally did say like, we're not able to offer you admission at this time, yeah, it really stung. But then at the same time, all these other colleges had been, hey, Chika, we want you. Hey, Chika, we want you. So I'm like, okay, well, sure, guys. Now I'll talk to you guys. So, yeah.
Hey, that was Davidson's loss. So listen. So what advice do you have for students who don't get in their top choice?
Honestly, I feel like going into the college process, love your entire list of colleges and have an open mind. I think when you go in very narrow, if you don't get into your top choice, it's very hard to now turn around and like start loving another school that you've been like bashing and mentally inside of your mind. So I would say have an open mind to other options. And at the end of the day, God has a plan. So you're going to go where you need to be.
Okay, Chika, that was like so good. That are you coming after my job over there, Gwinnett? That's like trying to tell everybody, love all your lists, love and it's hard. It's like one of those things. It's kind of easier said than done, right?
Yes,
like
for real,
because we're not robots, right? And it's sort of hard not to gravitate toward a couple names on the list.
Yeah,
but you really have to have the mindset that any of these places can get me where I'm trying to go. And what I find is that students have no problem loving their challenge and their reach schools, and maybe even their possibles, and and like their 50-50 kind of coin toss type schools. It's like the probables, the likelies, the safeties. Those are the ones that are like, yeah, I'll put it on your list just to keep you happy, but I'm not going there. Those are the ones that people need to really love, because you might end up going there.
That's fine.
One thing you did that I thought was really good. We came up in advance with the number consultation with your mom. This is the maximum amount that we're going to pay for college. And it was it was a decent number. It was going to be colleges were going to get a nice chunk of money, but you still had that number. And you're like, if we don't find a school within that price point, then we're not going. And that's what I encourage everybody to do.
Just being realistic and stuff.
Yeah. And the thing that's good is, so when parents communicate that to the student knows that going in, they can adapt. It's when the parent doesn't do that, and they make the child feel like, oh, wherever you go, don't worry about the money, we'll take care of it. And then they say, ooh, I can't pay 60 or 70 or 50 or whatever. And then they come in, and then it's like hard because it's like a bait and switch for the kid.
Yeah.
You agree? You agree with that?
Yeah.
Let's take a break to learn about Mark's recommended resource for the week.
The recommended resource for episode 81 is a classic book entitled How to Raise an Adult. And the subtitle is Break Free of the Over-Parenting Trap and Prepare Your Kid for Success. It's by Julie Lythcott-Haim. And it's a fascinating book because it looks at when parenting changed, why parenting changed, and how parenting has changed. It looks at the over-involvement of parents. And it looks at the lack of unstructured time that kids have these days to play. One thing I like about the book is that it goes into the history of how this happened. And so 3 of the things it points out are in the mid-1980s, childhood started to change. And they point to Adam Walsh. You may know John Walsh, founder of America's Most Wanted. And when his child was abducted, they made it into a made-for-TV movie on his son. And that led to children being on milk cartons. And so this led to this fear of strangers and then parents feeling like they need to just stay on top of their kids. And then the next thing was the book A Nation at Risk came out, and it argued how America's kids were falling behind other countries like China, Singapore, in self-esteem. That led parents to hover more. And then another thing it points out is the increase of women working. It understands it's a necessity. It doesn't criticize it, but it just says it's a fact. As women started working more, that led to more daycare. Then they found it harder to find time to play. And then after finding hard to find time to play, it led to the creation of a play date, which appeared to just be a practical way to schedule time. But this is my favorite things in the book. It says, first you schedule play, then you observe play, then you're involved in play. So a great book looking at how parenting has changed and what needs to be done if you're going to raise a functioning adult. Now return to my interview with Chika Nwosu. Okay, Chika, let's go back to the 10 schools you were admitted to. And why don't you break them down between ones you visited and ones you didn't visit?
Okay, so going in, I would say 13 school is a lot. And in terms of taking off work and flying, realistically, my mom was like, Chika, we're not going to be able to visit all of these schools, which I totally understood. So we kind of had a game plan going in. If there was like reasonable chance of me going, then we would go ahead in terms of like full tuition, big scholarships, anything like that. That's when we would go and visit that school. So I visited a couple beforehand. I visited Emory last year and stuff like that. I really like Emory and I really like the resources that they have. For me, though, it just kind of lacked the culture that I am kind of used to. I like a really interconnected, hanging out with students and everybody is gung-ho to help each other. And I felt like Emory's culture was more very, we have the CDC, we have our Coca-Cola endowment. It was very much, they didn't really talk about the culture, which is something that I was like, kind of missed me there.
You're such a people person. You were like, you want that community feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then, so Mercer was probably the next. I visited Case Western, which was up north. And for me, I did like the resources that Case Western had. And they're very big on research. So there was a lot of research opportunities, which was very interesting to me. For me, it was also kind of the same thing that they kind of missed me with the students truly loving their school and loving each other. A lot of the students went there because of the research opportunities and the academic financial aid, and less because I love this school, I love the culture here and stuff like that. And it was also just very, very cold up there. I didn't realize how cold Ohio was.
You're a Georgia.
I was wearing
You've been Georgified. You're a true
Yes.
Georgian.
Yes, I was wearing my heaviest winter jacket and I was freezing. So they kind of missed me there with that. Next, I visited Mercer. I visited them on their presidential scholarship weekend. So I was there interviewing for their presidential scholarship. And I can say visiting Mercer was probably the closest school I got to visiting Davidson. Because I had visited Davidson, I think, my junior year over spring break. And the thing that drew me into Davidson was the campus culture, the service attitude, students loving students, high integrity. It was everything that I love about my high school, just magnified in Davidson. So for me visiting Mercer, me and my mom instantly stepping onto that campus, it's so homey. And there are so many students there standing in the rain, helping us, walking us to places. They weren't, if we were like, where is the gift shop? They didn't say it's around the corner to the left. They said, let me walk you to the gift shop, and they'll walk back themselves. And it was just so warm and inviting. On top of that, the amazing resources that they have in terms of pre-med programs and stuff like that, and their own medical school and stuff. And even interviewing for their presidential scholarship, you could tell that they're very big on service and helping each other, which is something that I really liked. And even after the presidential scholarship weekend, me and my mom, we were like, Mercer at the top right now. It was, and even after they gave me the presidential scholarship, which was full tuition, we were like, that was number one for a really, really long time. So that's why, honestly, because Mercer grabbed me so early, that is honestly why I didn't visit a lot of my other schools, because when you get the financial aid packet, Mercer already offered me full tuition and they're 2 hours away. So you have to offer me full tuition or no comparison. So the next school that kind of offered me that amount was, I also visited Vanderbilt because I was in the running for wanting to see if I could get one of their big scholarship as well, which Vanderbilt is truly such a beautiful school. And honestly, I did like the campus culture too. The students there really seemed involved. And I had a couple of past students that went to my high school that were in the same clubs that I was. They also went there and I was able to reconnect with them and talk to them. And they really, really loved Vanderbilt. For me, it was just kind of the pre-med academic program was just very, very rigorous. That was kind of frightening to me as well. But in terms of like beauty and the professors wanting to get involved and stuff, I really liked Vanderbilt. The last school that I visited was the University of Miami, which is a very, very funny story because my mom was like, Miami's 12 hours away, Chika. Mercer's 2 hours away. I want you to stay close to me. So this is a no contender. And I was like, Mommy, they gave me an essay to write about leadership, which is amazing. So I was able to get their full tuition scholarship. So I was like, you said in the first half that any school that gives me full tuition scholarship, we're going to have to go visit. And she said, fine. So we went down there and it was so warm and diverse and it was so beautiful. And going to because they had a scholarship weekend as well. And so I got to see the campus and they're building it's a little bit cramped right now, but they're also building new housing that's available for me. That'll be available my first year when I get there, my sophomore year. It will be the first class to live in there. And they have this amazing program called the Foot Fellows program, which would allow me to be exempted from all the other kind of prerequisite elective type classes that other colleges make you take. I'd only have to take classes that pertain to my major and stuff like that, which would allow me to maybe double minor or double major or really take classes that I enjoy instead of classes that are just required of me to take to check off a list. And so once hearing about their Foot Fellows program, me and my mom had to take a step back and we were like, whoa, this is actually a contender now. So those are kind of the schools that I visited, and Miami was definitely a surprise visit for me.
Well, I remember those conversations of trying to convince you to visit. You have to go, Chika. I know it's 12 hours, but go check it out. Remember those conversations we had?
Yeah. For sure.
So the ones you didn't visit then where you got in were UNC Chapel Hill, because I know you were admitted there.
Mm-hmm.
Who else?
Wake Forest.
Wake Forest. Oberlin.
Because I was just in Ohio. I was like, I can't go back to the cold. So there's just... I can't.
After Case, you were done with the cold weather.
Yeah.
So but that's why you visit to check it out, you know?
Yes, truly, yes. And Baylor, I didn't go to visit Baylor and stuff like that. And UGA, I never visited UGA, which it's right down the street, 45 minutes away as well. But
by the way, that's the University of Georgia, for those who wonder what UGA is. And
oh, yeah, of course.
And earlier you said Zell Miller. Zell Miller is pretty much full tuition, which the top students in Georgia get. And you got Zell Miller at Georgia. You know, one thing you may not know, I don't even know if you know this or not, Chika, but you got the Singer Scholarship to Miami, and they only give that to the top 5% of their applicants.
Oh, really?
Yeah, only the top 5%. They only have one scholarship above that, which is their Stamp Scholarship, which only 5 people get in the whole country.
Oh, dang.
And so that was the second highest scholarship that they offer. So congratulations.
Thank
now
you.
for the big reveal. Where will you be going to college next year, Chika?
I will be attending the University of Miami in Florida.
I think people could tell where you were going with that. So congratulations. And she's in the Foot Fellows Honors Program. We've talked about honors colleges before. Just a fantastic. What was it about Foot Fellows that drew you there? Because I remember your mom loved Foot Fellows.
Yes. It's the academic freedom that I get from the Foot Fellows program, because a lot of the colleges I visited, you have to take some sort of cognate, some sort of classes that you must take outside of your major. And with the honors program, University of Miami, I'm not limited to that. I'm only required to take the classes in my major. So I want to do biology on pre-med. I'd only have to take my pre-med classes and my biology classes for major, which for me wouldn't be enough for me going to college just doing that. So it allows me to now do some things that I'm kind of interested in, but never got the opportunity to study. So for me, I'm going to use the opportunity to double minor and take some psychology classes, which is a love of mine, and as well as minor in dance. So
awesome. So Chika, as we start to wind down here, any words of wisdom to parents of juniors or even sophomores who are listening?
Ooh, advice. Love this opportunity. For parents of sophomores and even juniors, I think I would say the biggest thing is just communication and reality, I guess, because I feel like a lot of kids and parents, there's a big disconnect in the reality of where a child can go and like where they want to go. And I think if everybody's on the same page, as in if you want to go here, you're going to have to get these kind of grades, you're going to have to like be involved in more schools, more school related clubs. I think that helps a lot of people in terms of not having a big, oh, I can't come here when you get to like senior year. And I think that's a lot of my friends felt, is they didn't really understand truly where academically they stand in very competitive schools. And I guess my advice for the students, sophomores, I feel like you have so much time to build your academic resume and you have so much time to get involved in school. So I'd say find your little niche in school and kind of just rise in that. Don't worry about spreading yourself too thin, because colleges just want to see a student that will make an impact at their school. So if they see you making an impact at your high school and getting involved there, they're like, ooh, that's a student we want at our campus. And for juniors, I'd say, one, take your SATs or ACTs early so they're not a stress your senior year, because senior year you kind of get overwhelmed kind of applying to colleges and stuff like that. But I'd also say start early on writing your Common App essays and stuff like that, because they take some time and you really want to pour your heart into them so the colleges kind of know what, as well as the sophomores, like what are you bringing to their college? They really want to know you as a person and not just I have the highest grades and stuff like that. They really want to know what you're passionate about, what kind of person you're going to be in their college campus. So, yeah.
Awesome. Now, one last question. What advice would you have to college counselors, Chika?
Ooh, that's kind of interesting. Honestly, I feel like school counselors and college counselors, I think there should be a little bit more joint effort, because I think honestly I didn't know about outside of school college counseling. That's why I came to you so late, because I didn't even know about it. So I feel like if more school counselors would kind of get involved in terms of connecting students to maybe outside of school counselors, it'll really open the doors for a lot of kids, because I can truly say before all of this, it was Davidson. And then if Davidson, I'd maybe end up at Emory. And I honestly did not get a lot of financial aid at Emory, so I would have been stuck paying a lot of money at Emory, because I wouldn't have even applied to Mercer, because I didn't even know about Mercer's amazing financial aid packets. And so because I worked with you, you even gave me the list of University of Miami. I would have never even thought of applying here. So now the school I'm going to spend the next 4 years at is because I worked with you. So I would just say, for kids not to limit themselves in terms of get a college coach that can help you, because state schools are not your only option. You can go outside of state and it be cheaper, or it's just the same price as your in state schools. So yeah.
Well, Chika, I can just say that I'm beyond proud of you. You have just in listening to you, you embody so many of the things that are keys to success. For example, optimism, grit. You bounce back when you didn't get in your dream school. People skills, relationships, setting high goals and working hard, organization, planning, spirituality, faith. I know your future is super, super bright. And I know you're just going to crush it as a dermatologist or whatever you end up doing with your life. And I can see your practice just growing and growing. And I'm excited to have you come back after the end of your freshman year and bequeath your wisdom to all of us.
Yeah.
About what you learned in your first year of college. All right.
Yes, I'm excited.
Thank you so, so much. And just know that a lot of us out here are really proud of you.
Next week in the news, parents are giving up custody of their kids to get need-based college financial aid. And we'll be in chapter 82 of 171 answers. And we're talking about the gap year and if your child should take one. And next week's question is from a parent who is torn between their child's acceptance at Wake Forest with a scholarship versus their acceptance at Stanford, where they will not qualify for financial aid. And Mark will be interviewing Mr. Dave Wagner, the Director of Admissions at St. Olaf, and Understanding the Common App, Part 1. So timely. Common App just opened August 1st.
We're getting better at that, Anika. When we first started this podcast, we would have done like a Common App one, like, I don't know, the wrong time where everything was off. We didn't think about synchronizing. We're still not great, but we're improving.
Progress. Baby steps.
Yeah. So, Anika, I was at Smith College for 2 days. A great program, counselor fly-in program. I attended 15 to 17 of us. So smaller group. Great time in Northampton. Really enjoyed it. A few things about Smith. First of all, really, really incredible alumni base. Like 50,000 alumni. And they hook each other up. They really do. Like, just actually, this is kind of in line with what we were just talking about LinkedIn. Another thing, their career placement, their internship, the services that they do, the resources that they devote to that are incredible. And they do one of these things that University of Richmond does, where if you find an unpaid internship, and you really don't need to find it because they'll find it for you. They start working with freshmen on their internships. They'll turn around and make it a paid internship and pay you. They increased it. It used to be like around $2,500. Now they're giving you more than $3,000 because what they want to do is close the gap between people that could just go do an unpaid internship versus people that need to make money. Right? Very, very sensitive on social justice. Very sensitive on sort of diversity issues. It's a liberal school. Okay. If your inclinations are not liberal, is going to be uncomfortable. In fact, I said to them, would a Trump reporter be comfortable here? And boy, I was talking to a student. She almost bit my head off. You better not show up. Yeah.
Answer no.
She was like, them are fighting words. So it's going to be strong. Very intellectual, but very liberal, activist, proud feminist, very rigorous school. Same thing going on all the other schools. Mental health, of course, is a concern everywhere. All these schools, I met with their mental health counselor, and she said the same thing. This technology is killing these kids out here. They require 128 credit hours to graduate, which is a lot. That means you need to average 16. There's not a lot of, per semester. So not a lot of room for error. They're part of a consortium, which is really nice, with UMass Amherst and Mount Holyoke. And what's amazing about that is it opens up so many more courses for you to take. And they have a great busing system that picks you up and takes you. So it used to be it's kind of like a 5-college system. The 5 Colleges Consortium is one of the great features of Smith. They actually were incorporated over 50 years ago as an organization. And you can read all about it on their excellent and very detailed website, which is just simply www.5colleges.edu. Now, recently, Hampshire, one of the 5, is really struggling and may not survive. But the private Amherst College is in the consortium, and they're a great natural match with Smith because not only are they a highly selective liberal arts college, but they also are one of the half dozen schools with the open curriculum. The consortium allows students to take courses at all of the colleges, but it also allows them to hear amazing guest lectures, attend parties, join clubs, attend cultural events, and just meet a lot more people from the various 5 campuses. Now, when I was at Smith and I talked with the students, they mentioned UMass Amherst the most. That's understandable because it's 10 times the size of the others. And they also mentioned Mount Holyoke quite a bit, but that also makes sense because they are a 7-sister school. But the entire 5-college consortium is really a big part of what Smith offers. They also have this 12-school consortium with a bunch of schools in there, including Dartmouth and some others, where you can take courses at those other schools, which is pretty neat. So it's a place that cares deeply about learning, where the women, I feel, are really, really well taken care of and their confidence can flourish and soar. But I would definitely say that it's going to be much more of an attractive place to a highly intellectual, hardworking, left-leaning feminist who's very, very progressive and who's liberal in all aspects of liberal. Like sometimes you say, are you liberal socially? Are you liberal politically? Are you liberal sexually? Like, how are you liberal? You're going to end up to be, the person who's liberal in all aspects of liberality is the kind of person I think would feel most comfortable there. Now, one thing that's very important to understand about Smith College is its open curriculum. And its curriculum is a true open curriculum. I mean, they have a foundational writing class, but other than that, you can study whatever you want without required courses, without distribution requirements in subjects that you don't like. And there truly are only about a half a dozen schools in the country with a full open curriculum like Smith has. Now, this does not mean that there are not requirements within your major, but I'm referring to classes before you declare your major. Another thing is that students, they don't live in dorms. They live in these 37 houses, and they all have pianos. They're very quaint. They're spending time in their houses. They have collections of books. They're very homey, and they build community. They also have 16 dining halls. They're also really serious about their outreach to non-traditional students. Their Ada Comstock program is one of the true outstanding non-traditional programs that you'll find out here. And they do a great job of making students feel welcome. Their director of that program, Sid, is actually going to come on our podcast in 2020 to talk about it. So I'm excited about that. One of the 7 sister schools is who they are. Now you wonder, what are the 7 sister schools? Well, these were the Ivies for women before the Ivies went co-ed. So they're approaching their 150th birthday coming up here really shortly. And another unique thing is that they're a liberal arts college with an accredited engineering program. You need to change this term liberal arts to say liberal arts and sciences, because STEM is actually where they're really powerful, one of their more powerful areas, with more than 50% of students getting degrees in science, technology, engineering, and math. Study abroad, really, really big at Smith. And the nice thing is that if you have a financial aid package, and they're very generous with financial aid, by the way, then your financial aid does go with you. They are a need conscious or need aware school, but they meet full financial need. And as we talked about before, it's more important that a school meets full financial need than that they're need conscious or need aware. But they've got these great study abroad programs in places like Geneva, Florence, and then they're affiliated with another 100 as well. Smith's a test optional college. So for those of you who do very well in rigorous classes but don't test well, you do not have to worry about your test scores hindering you either in admissions or merit scholarships. Some schools won't use test scores in admission, but if you want to get a merit scholarship, you need to have high test scores. They do not use merit scholarships either way. Now, if you do submit them, they're going to use them. So don't get it twisted. The commitment to service at Smith is at its core, and you can see it absolutely right in the mission statement. It's fleshed out every day. Friends, look at those mission statements. They're very important at telling you about a school. And one admissions tip I would share with you for your college counselors, as well as students who are listening, is Smith has made it really crystal clear to me and the other counselors that were on the visit. The transcript is first, of course, in their evaluation, but next is recommendations. Recs count more than extracurriculars. They count more than essays. They count more than demonstrated interest. They count more than, of course, test scores being test optional. So those teacher recommendations, those counselor recommendations, those outside recommendations, they are going to weigh very heavily in the process. This is a school with a very generous endowment. And I'll tell you, one of my favorite interviews I ever did was with their, at that time, Dean of Admission, Deb Shaver, but she just left like literally 1 month after the interview. But she spent 24 years at Smith. And if you really are interested in Smith, I would encourage you to go to episode 33, where we do a much deeper dive. Yeah. So,
awesome.
Like I said, we're just doing these little extras at the end of our show because every week I'm either on a college or I'm meeting with college officers. So next week we'll have the University of San Francisco because I met with them.
I was just
The
about
University
to say,
of San Francisco because I met with them when I was out in California. So they're up on deck.
Why not? Why not?
Enjoy your weekend, Ika.
You too.
And that's our show. A big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. And if you found this podcast helpful, it would help us tremendously if you would subscribe and write us a review on your favorite podcast listening station. And please be sure to click the share button and send this to someone you know that could really use this information. Your College Bound Kid is produced by John Lockenbaugh. The amazing music that you hear is by Victor Allen Weeks. Artwork is by Andrea Togo. And marketing designs are by Kimberly Blass. If you want to get a copy of the book, 171 Answers to the Most Asked College Admissions Questions, you can go right to 171answers.com. And if you want to have a college coaching session with Mark, you can send him a text to area code 404-664-4340.
And if you have a question or a few questions that you would like for us to answer on the show, please email us at questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com. That's questions with an S at yourcollegeboundkid.com. Every week, we'll take one question and include it in the episode. We don't like your questions. We love your questions, so send them our way. And by the way, check out our website, which is just simply yourcollegeboundkid.com. Again, we thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to meeting with you again next week.